Well, I think your analysis was very straight-lined. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing frogs.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go along that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Tomorrow, Taylor. That's good.
I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Chinese critic.
erratic
Mikhail
detective, is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African supping in young? Why a man and sup a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there, welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Akash Persaud. Akash couldn't make it today. We have a very interesting program. It is always enlightening for a country, and it augurs well for its future when young people take to intellectual activism and political activism. We have one of the youngest population in this country, and I could remember since the 70s, Walter Rodney used to decry the absence of young people in the bulk of where the society is going. And so we have three young intellectuals, three young budding, two budding politicians. Two of them are in political parties, and one of them, well, I don't know where his political affiliations or party status will go, but he's quite known to be involved. Two of our guests have been here quite often, and we welcome them again because when we check our numbers, we always get good numbers to them. One of them have made an appearance here 2 years ago, and we hope that this second appearance will make us turn it into a third, fourth, and fifth appearance. We have every intention of inviting him back again and again. Our guest this evening, alphabetically, is Bhagwandin, financial analyst. Kian Jabour, the chairman of a political party named A New and United Guyana. Everyone knows it by the acronym ANUG. And the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition, Elson Lowe, who is the spokesperson for the opposition on oil and gas. So it should be an interesting 1 hour ride. There are no restrictions on what they want to say to the public, to our viewers, and to each other. So let me welcome them, and then we go straight to our first question, which when it is answered, we go around the table. Elson, 2 years ago, glad to have you back.
Yeah,
I'm not going to shake your hand and your hand. Your old heads on this program. The first question, and then we go around the table. We go alphabetically, so it's Joel, then Kian, then Elson. Joel, this country, our country, have an economic blueprint to take it into the future. Are you satisfied that that blueprint can be intellectually defended as a good one, and that on the basis of that, the young people of this country could be assured of Guyana taking strides in the world?
Well, I'll give you
a very brief answer to begin with. And I would say that blueprint that you refer to, I defend it every day. So the short answer is yes. So I'll allow you to go around the table.
Joel, something strange is happening here. You shouldn't play with my life like that. You always have a very elaborate answer. You want to shift, you could answer that, not necessarily sticking to what I have said about the blueprint.
Okay, I'm going to find an intermediate here. To be honest with you, I do think there are aspects that can be defended. I do think there are some good decisions being made. I do think infrastructure, etc., is important. So I can get on board with certain aspects. There are definitely aspects that I will, to say the least, again, to keep it as brief as Joel kept it, it's hard for me to defend economic policies for the future when they're suffering now. All right, I think that the balance is what's missing at the moment.
Okay, before I go to Elson, I noticed that many times in this program, you can see the guest went to the hairdresser. Now, look.
I did this
You want to tell me that the hairdresser touches not on that? Elson, whatever the opposition does, you will be behind it because you're advising the opposition on the policies towards the economic and financial structure of this country. You want to reshape the question I have just asked?
Well, there's a couple things I'd like to say. The first, perhaps humorously though, is that I did not go to the hairdresser specifically for this program.
Well, I didn't say that.
But one does make trips there on occasion. Listen, one of the things that I think is good and healthy about Guyana right now, but it's an odd thing for me to say, is I think it is good that there is such disagreement between the opposition, the main opposition, and the government regarding the policy direction of the country, because it means that we can have robust issue-oriented debates. I am not sure that there's been a time in Guyana where there's been more disagreement about the direction of travel for the country. Essentially, what has happened is that over the last 7 years, I think I've been making more or less the same arguments. And as time goes on, people gradually get converted to the argument because of the circumstances of the country. So we can go into some detail as to that. But what the government is pursuing, which they've explained, and which I can understand why they're saying that, is a pretty normal, structured development program that they think is going to lead them to a society that has a certain level of development and growth. But the problem is, the country has, and this is something that Kian sometimes points out, gotten rich so fast that all of the previously existing frameworks are almost meaningless. And we can go into detail on those. But essentially, I said this about 7 years ago, saying it now, and the argument has gotten more and more persuasive. The more oil that's found, the more oil that's produced.
We are going to continue in that direction, or we're going to say, we're going to ask Joel to defend, which you said you defended every day. Joel, is this country on the right path that we're already near to the head of CARICOM, but will be a standard bearer for the third world?
So, so now I'm going to elaborate, right? So when you say when you say right path, it's subjective without context. So let me define right path for whom? Right path for the people of the country, right path for the business sector, right path for the investors, and from an international perspective. Now, when we say right path, from my vantage point, let's take it from both from a business standpoint as well as from an individual standpoint. You want to be able to have predictability. You want to be able to, when you make an independent assessment of the direction in which the country is going, policy-wise, development-wise, economic management and governance-wise, politically wise, you want to be able to exist in a country that is predictable into the foreseeable future. So how do you is there predictability? I'm rephrasing your question. Is there predictability? Yes. Where does this predictability started, or how was it engineered? And to answer that question, I'll respond to Elson Lowe's comment where he made that the development strategies that we have that is guiding the government of the day, that those are meaningless in the context of the oil wealth, the resources that we have, and perhaps in the context of it's dated information. So there's some important point to note there. The development strategies that are guiding the government of the day, it started since in the early 90s, the 1996 development strategy. Now, if you do an exercise, if any student or anyone do an exercise, all the national budgets are publicly available from 1994 to present, and you take that 1996 document and you go through all those budgets, you would see that 1996 strategy was implemented incrementally. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that are in that strategy that are still relevant today. The bridge that we're building across the Demerara River, it was conceptualized since in the 1996 strategy that we are now building today. Is the bridge meaningless today, or is it still relevant? All the road networks that we're building presently, all of it were already conceptualized in the 1996 document. So using those two examples alone, could we really say that it is meaningless, or is it still relevant? We still need the roads, we still need the bridge. Now that's just two examples. The second point to note is that strategy has been updated. It was followed by, for example, the poverty reduction strategy, which was followed by the national competitiveness strategy, which was followed by the low carbon development strategy of 2009, the original version, and which was followed by now presently the expanded version of the low carbon development strategy. So the strategy it's a live document. It is not dated or outdated. It is being updated, and through a consultative process. So that's the first thing I would say in terms of predictability and whether we're on the right path. So I'll stop there for now. I think that's a mouthful.
Kian, can I pass? Do you have anything to add, or can I pass to
No,
Elson?
by all means.
No, I'm
Wonderful. No. I will chime in. I will chime in accordingly. But he responded to Elson, so I think it's right that Elson, have the opportunity to respond. So by all means, he didn't respond to my.
No. Elson will have his. I want to go.
I'll jump in after Elson. Go ahead. I'll jump in immediately.
Elson,
I'm backing out.
I'm not backing out. I can't. My comment.
I know why
okay.
he has nothing to say.
Well, I
was about
For the first time, the man has been stumped. For the first time, the man
It's
has
not
been stumped.
stumped.
Congratulations, Joel.
I'm sure
you have silent, Kian.
I'm sure Kian will be folded into some of the things.
I have lots to say. I can comment on what was just said there.
He's giving it to you, Elson.
Go ahead.
Now, essentially, Joel's argument, I think maybe 7 years ago, was an argument that persuaded a lot of people. All right, well, we follow this path. We have had ups and downs. There's a lot of disagreement around the path, but this is the path. But what's happened essentially is that between then and now, Guyana now has, according to the IMF, a per capita GDP, adjusted for prices, as high as the United States right now. So next year, the following year, is going to have a per capita GDP higher than every other country in the world, adjusted for prices, in only a couple of years. So as time goes on, the idea that we should be relying on a 1996 strategy becomes absurd to the point that it starts to produce weird paradoxes. And so one example is that right now, because... Well, I'll give you an example. Right now, because the mathematics pass rate at CSEC has been so poor for so long, and of course, many of these years, 20-something years, was on you have in excess of 30 years on the PPP in the last 30 years, in the last 40 years. But essentially what has happened is you've got the vast majority of Guyanese without a math and English pass, which is the equivalent of having a kind of a high school certification in the UK or so on or so forth. What that means is that there's a lot of catch-up work that has to be done. And right now, the government's program is a GED program, which is 3,000 people a year. They're trying to educate so that they can go on to do further study and so on. But it implies, because it's 400,000 people that don't have maths and English, that's going to take 100 years for Guyanese to have a similar level of human capital accumulation to the United Kingdom. Which to me, that can't be, right? So I think to myself, what we're seeing is not necessarily, yes, there's some disagreements around motivation in the government, but I'm not making an argument. I'm saying the circumstances have changed so much that things that might seem perfectly normal, like, a GED program, 3,000 students, verge on crazy in this environment, because you mean to tell me your goal is that it's going to take 100 years for the Guyanese population to have a similar level of human capital accumulation as the United Kingdom, whose GDP per capita we surpassed recently? That can't be right. So as I said, as time goes on, these arguments become more and more compelling, and people start to say, oh my God, we have to have a radical policy shift because the country has changed radically from 1996.
So a couple of corrections.
If I may jump in now.
Okay.
Because apparently being nice is not welcome on this program anymore, Freddie. So it was going to be a very, not similar comment, but he did hit the nail on a few heads there. Because what I was going to say to your comment was, I believe that we are definitely following some of the strategies from previous documents, from previous strategies, from previous outlooks. And I think, as Elson has correctly pointed out, so much has changed, in particular, the amount of wealth that the country has accumulated now, that although we can nitpick, and funny enough, you are correct in what you're saying, a lot of the strategies, like projects, for example, the bridge and the roads, have been looked at since then and definitely are being put into practice now, and rightfully so. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. My problem with it is it translating to making Guyanese lives better now? Or is there this hope that what will come with infrastructural development will lead to other things, will lead to, more businesses and money, I guess, trickling down, as they like to say it simply. But the reality is, as Elson rightfully pointed out, if our security and crime rate is where it is, if our education sector has not, none of our curriculums have been updated to anything of consequence within the last 20 years, our health system is on the verge of collapse. I mean, the human capital, lack of nurses, lack of doctors, lack of teachers. I just looked at a video recently of children having to be moved out of their school, out of their classroom, because the school had no power, no water. And I sit in here going, what's going to happen to the next few generations? Now, we talk about building schools, we talk about XYZ. Again, more infrastructural projects, but nothing is translating back to developing the human capital in the country. And I think that's where the argument, or at least conversation, needs to kind of stem from now. We can't just look at one aspect and completely forget the other.
Before you go, could we say X, Y, and Z? Where Guyanese, the American said Z. I like to say so.
I said Z or Z?
You said Z.
Oh, my apologies, Z. It's like papa and papaya.
Got me off guard there, Freddie.
You ready for me now?
Yes, sure.
So, I like where you landed. You landed exactly where I wanted you to land. Based on what I want to.
So you're going to pulverize it?
Here we go.
I think I know what he's going to say.
No, you don't know what to say. So let me correct a few things you said. You said that our per capita GDP has surpassed the US on a purchasing power parity.
On the same level as the US.
It's not on the same level.
Based on the IMF estimate, which is
not on the same level.
Okay.
US per capita, I just checked it. It's 77,000. We are still 25,000.
The US per capita GDP, adjusting for prices, according to the IMF, is 83,000 US. Guyana's is 80,000 US. You have to adjust for prices, purchasing power parity.
I just checked it on the
That
internet.
is not correct, and anyone can Google it and show that you're incorrect.
So we are on parity at 83,000?
What I'm saying is, adjusting for prices, the IMF, not Elson Lowe, says that Guyana's per capita income is almost the same as the United States is.
It is not.
Well,
It
listen,
is not.
viewers,
Anyway,
you can Google it,
anyways,
but that's
per
what it
capita
is.
income, purchasing power, per capita income is irrelevant to the broader depth of the conversation we're having here. We're talking about human capital development, and you spoke of the goal. You make some assertion that will take 100 years. Now it is important to first put that in context. Does our human capital stand currently in the country? And this is where it stands. The last labor force survey that was done
in 2021.
This,
what year
shows
is it?
That
2024, right? Keep going. Keep going.
That's the data that's available, right? That's the data that's available, unless you have alternate data.
No, keep going.
We just did a census.
It's not going to change. The human capital data is not going to change materially from 2021 to now, right?
People didn't graduate from university or school.
Why
wouldn't it change?
No, listen to the data. Less than 5%, you tell me, no, listen to the data. Less than 5% of the labor force possess a tertiary level education. How much graduates did we have from 2021 to now to flip that to 95%?
Not 95%.
So good. So
but there were thousands of people.
Let's say UG produced maybe about 6,000 graduates a year, right? So even if you add that, it's still less than 5% possess a tertiary education. Let's say 10%, right? Let's inflate it to 10%. So we could say that 90% of the labor force do not possess a tertiary level education. Why? The reason why goes back to our history.
Oh, thank you.
Our economic, social, and political history that drove people away from this country when we went through hardships, sufferings, all sorts of difficulties, when we went when we were competing with Haiti to be one of the poorest countries, when we went bankrupt. And so it took us 2 decades. It took us 2 decades to first of all recover from that state. In the late 80s, early 90s, we stabilized till around 2006. So that's the reality. And when you make comments like, oh, we have all this wealth, we have only started producing oil in about 4 years. We've extracted less than 7% of the recoverable resources that we have there. And that reminds me of the BBC guy who interviewed the president not so long ago. And when you listen to these guys, when you listen to these arguments, it leads one to believe you want us to achieve what the United Kingdom and the US took 300 years to achieve in 4 years. It's not practical. So you've got to be practical. So let's come back to human capital now. Let me leave some interesting authoritative data with you, and but more so the viewers. We talk about human capital. There is something called a Human Development Index, right? The latest Human Development Report by the United Nations, 2023, 2024.
Okay.
Guyana was ranked 95 out of 193 countries. That means we are ahead of 98 countries, right? We have improved on the Human Development Index over the last 10 years. Secondly, another United Nations report, you know that they do this assessment on the Sustainable Development Goals. The last assessment that was done, voluntary assessment, was done, I believe, in 2022, and we are 60% towards achieving those goals. That's the UN, not me or not the government of Guyana.
Can I ask what the criteria is based on?
Well, you could read the report.
But you're the one quoting it, so I figure you gotta defend the argument, because you can't just throw numbers out.
So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is based on, for example, access to water, access to electricity, access to healthcare, access to education, and those type of stuff, right? And the report is public. The other one I want to quote is the UN's 2023 Multidimensional Poverty Index rating was 0.007, down from 0.014 in 2014. And this is for Guyana, right?
So say that again, please. I didn't hear that too clearly.
0.007, this is 2023 index, down from 0.014 10 years ago, right, in 2014. Now that means that there is reduction in poverty. Now, when you look at let's look at our poverty reduction over a
a lot of
This
new
is
years
a
there,
flipping argument here. What was the who just came out with a report that we were 42% of our society is in poverty?
Listen, UNICEF said 43% in 2021. World Bank said 48% in 2022. So what has been happening is there's been an increase in poverty based on the World Bank and UNICEF. And I'm glad you cited quite a lot of APNU names.
And I think it's so important when comparison to remember our size of our population here.
Let's talk about the World Bank report. First, before I get to that, let's talk about time series. Poverty in the 80s was nearly 90%. Wow. Right now, poverty is less than 30%. Less than 30%.
Right? Hold on a second. Where are you getting that number
How
from?
have you gotten that number?
What?
Where did you get that number from?
Which number? 90%?
30% that you just said.
That's the unofficial number.
No, you can't unofficial number. Joel, that's manipulation. That's a downright lie.
There's no point in continuing that.
You gotta allow me to finish. You gotta allow me to finish. I'm telling you, the unofficial
Why can't
number.
we end up laughing by the end
You
of
talk
this?
about the
We gotta be honest. We gotta be honest.
Listen, you talk
just like the unofficial unemployment number, unemployment survey for 3 years.
But you're in the opposition.
The countries that don't have unemployment numbers are totalitarian regimes like North Korea. Nobody doesn't have unemployment numbers. That's unbelievable.
Not come out yet. This is illogical.
It is hard to defend this government without having those statistics because you can't gauge.
So what tells you I don't have those? I'm not.
Oh, you personally know those numbers. But the guy in this public doesn't know the numbers.
Come on.
Is that because the numbers are bad?
This is what we're talking about. It is information being thrown out with nothing back in it whatsoever.
That is crazy.
The census data. I actively engaged the Bureau of Statistics. The census report will be out very shortly. I recently did some private work where I had to engage the Bureau of Statistics, where I had to do a report on the state of poverty in Guyana, and those are the unofficial numbers. That's where I got the number from.
Well, when it is published, then we'll be happy to engage with those numbers. But until then, we don't have no idea.
The report has to be ratified before it's published.
Well, we have no idea.
But more importantly, who's ratifying it?
Yeah, I mean, what's the process?
What the international organizations have to have assessed this?
No. You don't know how these reports work. So
I could just call numbers then. I could just randomly say numbers as well.
70% poverty.
Yes.
You call things.
I think we're 80% poverty then. Let me make it just
90% unemployment.
Why you can't just say that?
All you have to do is park that argument and let's continue the discussion.
No.
Agreed.
Let's talk about it. I want to talk about the World Bank report. Could you go and get the World Bank report now?
I can bring. Well, actually, I don't know if I can get it.
No,
but I can bring that up and I can send you those two reports.
I'll bet you all the money in your bank account you won't find it. You know why? Because when the fact sheet was put out, I challenged it. And I challenged the credibility of the World Bank's number. And you could go and ask the World Bank.
Freddie, so the 2022 World Bank poverty figure, I'm going to pull that up and send it to Joel.
I'm talking about the fact sheet.
What do you have in your bank account?
I'm talking about the fact sheet. I'm talking about the fact sheet where everybody is citing that 40%.
Joel, you must surely know that I know you can challenge my numbers. Therefore, I can make sure I got the numbers beforehand.
So
this is not the first time I'm talking to you.
So find the fact sheet.
What is in your bank account? I'm not talking about the fact. I'm talking about the 2022 World Bank number, which is what you're challenging. Unless you're accepting my number.
I'm referring to the World Bank fact sheet that was published 2 years ago.
2022?
The fact sheet is not there. They removed it.
Joel, it is wild to me that you are sitting here telling me that you are challenging organizations like the World Bank from stating their statistics and you are deciding that they are wrong.
So why you
So when we base when we base all of the economics, everything that we have,
but
based on these international reports, so now we've reached a point. No. You definitely can. But again, UNICEF just came out with a very similar report just before. So you are now looking at all the international organizations.
The UNICEF data.
I'm not gonna lie, you sounded like ANUG during the elections. I'm not gonna lie. Oh yes, Carrie, come all of them lying. We win the election. This is the PPP doing the same thing now to statistics of poverty in Guyana. Come on.
Have you interrogated the UNICEF report? It's based on dated information.
Joel, what we're trying to convey is
the unofficial numbers should not be part of this conversation.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
Thank you. I think we ought to drop that line of argument and work with what is at least official and then engage in some discussions. Right?
Exactly.
Now, we may dispute some numbers because there's a specific criteria or something, but you can't just say that because of your opinion. You have to be pretty specific.
Yeah, but have you ever
credibly disputed any number? The government's inflation numbers, when the finance minister said that said that last year he increased money supply 24%, but you had 2% inflation. I had people from UJ, people from all over calling me to say that's basically impossible because 2% inflation is basically no inflation. And if you expand your money supply by 24%, you know the rate at which you have to grow in order to match that?
So what is the measure of inflation rate? The inflation rate is an index. It's the consumer price index. So the methodology of compiling the CPI, and I've written about this extensively not so long ago, what Starbucks News and others are looking at, you go to the market and you buy a pound of flour or a pound of sugar, and you're looking at the simple changes in price for a few items. That's not how the CPI works. The CPI, and you know that the CPI is a more complex methodology in which the index is calculated.
Even so, it would be very difficult to grow the money supply 24% and have virtually no inflation. It would be very difficult to do that. So that is why economists were calling me, because they didn't believe it was a credible number. Now, even further, I mean, when I sat down and I looked at...
Which economists call you?
Several people called me. I mean, I've even had... hold on a second.
What's the food inflation? What's the food inflation?
The food inflation number, the last I saw was 7.something%.
Right.
Was it
right. Close to 8%. So if you're talking about food prices, you got to understand that, well, but you got to explain to the average person that the CPI is made up of several indices. So the reason why why the overall all items inflation rate is low, but you'll have a higher inflation rate for food, is because all the other subcategories in the CPI have not had material changes, and that can be
one of the things that has been mentioned about the calculation of that CPI is the weighting of food is incorrect. That is something that has been brought up. I think Dr. Gampat brought it up a couple of days ago.
And one of the things
he challenged it. And one of the reasons that it's so important is that lower income people spend a disproportionate amount of their
revenue.
That is based off of economic studies. There's a million studies that have been done on that. I think John Maynard Keynes is the first person to make that.
Guyana?
John Maynard Keynes is the first person to make that observation nearly 100 years ago, and it's been economic studies since then.
And it applies to Guyana?
Well, there's an economy in Guyana. We have a free market in Guyana. We're engaging in economic discussion in Guyana. Or economics is only applicable outside Guyana. And in Guyana, we have to rely on magic statistics like the unofficial number.
Yeah. But you understand the issue that we're having.
Or some broad study done 100 years ago.
We're having a conversation.
There have been studies since then.
The thing I don't want to cover. The thing I think is good for Guyana.
So I'm saying.
No, but Freddie, the problem that we have here is there's not enough information.
I like how all three of you have these good statistics. This is good for our intellectual future.
No, but when we don't have good statistics, that's the problem. And that's what we keep getting back to. Because the argument could go on and on and on.
Exactly, if we're not.
And then everybody just throwing numbers out because I feel like inflation has gone up. I feel like, X, Y, Z.
Listen, you have to have some reasonable... You can't just assert... So there's 100 years of economic history behind what I'm saying. Endless economic papers.
But then also the drastic changes as of recent.
Yeah, but even so, what I'm saying is it's principles that have been enshrined over a long period of time. You're talking about stability of policy. That's not just something you're saying out top here. That's economic principle enshrined over a period of time. So
both of you are part of a political party. You're part of the major opposition. I think your party has.
I hope you're not coming to say that us challenging you on the unofficial number is because of bias.
No, I'm not.
Because anybody can challenge an unofficial number.
What I'm saying to you is that you sit in the National Assembly as the opposition. When this government was in opposition, they were able to engage all the agencies and get data. Why you can't get data? Why you can't confirm what I'm saying?
Well, because the agencies don't want to give us the data.
Not only that, they heavily relied on the international figures. They heavily relied on the reports that came out from World Bank and UNICEF.
It is the responsibility of the government to be transparent with the people of Guyana. It's not their personal economy. It belongs to the people of Guyana.
And it will be published. But if you
there has not been an unemployment survey since 2021.
If you are worth your salt, you don't have to rely on unofficial number, any number. You could extrapolate and come up with your own statistical analysis, which you have never done.
Hold on a second.
I've never seen.
I think in January or February of 2023, at a press conference, I said the anticipated inflation given the change in money supply in Guyana is 7%. The US put out 6.6% at the end of 2023. That's what I said. You can go and check the press conferences. I sat down, I looked at the change in the budget, I looked at the change in the money supply,
which is no.
And I said 7% should be the inflation at the end of this year. 6.6% was the US government number.
That is consistent for a single subcategory.
No, hold on a second. Not Elson Lowe's number at the end of the year. The US government inflation number was 6.6%. My number was 7%.
For who, the US or Guyana?
Listen, I'm not going to engage you with that kind of propagandistic. Listen, let's focus on what the specific topic is.
No,
you asked me to point out a calculation that I did which proved correct. I pointed out that calculation.
The number is not what you calculate. The number is the food price.
All right. So you're saying you know what the number is that I calculated. You asked me to provide evidence. I provided the evidence. I mean, come on.
I mean, but we not basing this on
anything. Public statements. I'm at press conferences nonstop.
If you want to dispute the CPI, where's your alternate CPI? Where is your alternate policy and development?
What I said from the beginning is I looked at the expected change in the money supply. I said I looked at the expected change in the money supply, and based on the expected change in the money supply, which is another economic theory, if you have lots of dollars and you have fewer goods, then it will increase the price of goods. What happened is the government increased the rate at which the national budget grew so quickly that it caused a shock in the economy, and therefore you saw an increase in inflation. It's not some complicated thing. It's pretty straightforward, which is why I had different people calling me to say if they increase the money supply that much, it's going to cause this shock effect. I mean, the maths is not some difficult maths. It's pretty straightforward. However, what is unfortunate...
And it's translating to what's happening on the ground.
Well, that's why people are seeing it. And that's why people are also saying these government numbers are...
Food prices inflation is consistent with the 7%.
Well, all I'm saying is that's the statistic, and that's what was calculated, and it was calculated in like January, February 2023, so it was long before the numbers came out. But what I really want us to understand here is I don't want us to have to be arguing about this, because it means that we can't have a proper policy debate. We started out by saying we can acknowledge some of the ideas the PUP has, whether rightly or wrongly executed. There are certain ideas. We, of course, in the coalition have different ideas. But if we can't even agree on something like whether or not we should use official or unofficial numbers, we can't speak to each other, and it is bad for the country. We need an environment in which we can at least speak to each other. I should not have to come here and say Guyana should be publishing unemployment numbers. In what universe? Are you not publishing unemployment numbers?
Yeah, but you should.
It is indefensible, and only North Korea, China, in some areas.
Yeah, but you're talking
communist countries. Why wouldn't you publish the numbers?
You're contradicting yourself. So let me give myself liberty here. You're contradicting yourself. You are well aware. You sit in a very important seat, and you gotta be honest too. You gotta be honest with yourself. You sit in a very important seat where you're the advisor for the opposition leader. So it is not that the government is not publishing unofficial numbers. The Labour Force Survey Report, which is the source study that the unemployment number comes from, was put on pause to facilitate the census. How long?
That is not
the
acceptable.
census-
I have raised that with the head of statistics.
Why can they not be done
So do we
You
have
can't-
the resources?
Let me ask, do we have the resources?
Do we have the
Kian, I'm going to let you deal with that one.
Yes, we have all.
We have the national budget triple in a couple of years and we don't have resources.
I always like to quote
we
Biden.
can't do any statistics.
We got more money than God.
We can't
we
afford
have
to
the
pay
resources.
people to go and look around.
Come on.
No,
There's international organizations that do this all over the world.
We don't have the resources.
No, but here's the problem. It's not about whether I can do it. That's not my background. But here's the problem. They don't want to bring in anybody outside of the PPP fold that they can manipulate the numbers. That's what the problem is. Stop letting your own PPP people do the numbers and allow international organizations, reputable organizations, to come in and do it.
Even if you
how long does the
even
US
if you
take to
want,
do their census?
even if the Bureau of Statistics is past capacity,
to America.
all you have to do is to hire an agency to sit.
Exactly.
You have money.
There are universities that do this. Everybody does it.
Come on. How long does the census take in the US?
We're talking about the unemployment numbers. Which can be run
not to mention, our population is less than 1 million. We call it 1 million people. What do you think that needs to be analyzed over 3 years that cannot have been done already? Come on.
Could you do it?
Come on.
So they could
you keep asking if I could personally do it. Can you do brain surgery? And nobody's asking what you can personally do. There are companies that do this. That's their business.
You see, this is why you will always remain in opposition because...
Well, that's your opinion. But the way this conversation going,
I know it was another unofficial statistic.
I'm giving...
But hey, you just need to acknowledge they made a mistake. They're going to publish unemployment numbers.
The numbers
That's it. Just say we shouldn't have stopped publishing unemployment numbers because it means that we can't measure the impact of our policies. That was a mistake.
Right.
Come on. If you choose to die on indefensible hills like that, then how are we going to have any kind of discussion? How is any reasonable Guyanese going to say, yeah, we don't have to know what the level of unemployment is in the country?
No one said that.
I mean,
you're making things up.
How are you measuring whether your policies are effective or not?
How are you measuring that?
Because they have the data internally.
Oh, jeez. Come on.
The secret data. You can't publish. This is good data, but you can't publish it.
Joel.
It's not the unemployment rate went up. You can't publish
it. Don't mean nothing to nobody.
So when you write your press release, when you go and you do your press conference, you have information. Don't you have to go through a process of validation before you put information out? When the opposition leader is faced with question, where is the
unemployment number has been published for years and years and years.
Policy. When the media asks them, where's the oil and gas policy?
Unemployment number has been published for years and years.
You just referenced it. One of the first things you did was reference this unemployment statistic in the 80s or something.
No. It's been published for years. There's no excuse for not publishing it. I think we should move on.
You're
gonna choose to die on this hill, really?
Let's move on. Let's move on.
The next argument I'm gonna say is this place resembles North Korea in some ways. Is it totalitarian?
What other? Please, ready.
Well,
something that might not do it.
Something else out.
I have always argued that we need our young people to get involved politically. And this,
you have two entertainers here. These guys are not serious.
We're trying to use factual information rather than unofficial numbers because the conversation can't continue unless we have facts.
So you want factual information? So
that would be nice.
We're hoping for that.
Okay. So let me give you some other data. The opposition leader always talks about real wages. Have you ever done any analysis? What is the real wages from 2019?
I have a sense in my mind of how real wages have trended and how that has negatively impacted Guyanese.
And how has it trended?
So here's an example. For UNICEF to say that poverty in Guyana was 43% in 2021, and in 2022, when we of course had that inflation spike and so on, the World Bank to say that poverty has gone to 48% means that you saw a decline in real wages. That's because a high inflation rate basically pushed people into poverty. That's one classic example. Now, of course, that is a trend, which given that poor people shop more, buy a greater portion of what they spend on is on food, and you've had high food inflation, there's every reason to think that that trend has continued or remained constant. Of course, we need some data in order to be able to see whether it has changed or not. But what I'm saying is that's a perfect example of how an inflationary shock has caused people to fall into poverty, and not dealing with the shock has resulted in people being in poverty, despite the fact that Guyana got a surplus, an unexpected $300 billion due to that high oil price due to the war in Ukraine. So that is an example of analysis of real wages.
So let me give you my data based on income tax data, right? Before I go there, let's agree to disagree on the UNICEF and the World Bank poverty rate. Let's agree to disagree on that. You're using
I have citations. I don't know.
I am disagreeing with that, right? Okay. Because it's challengeable.
I'm happy to provide the citation.
So, no, the citation is not important.
The citation is not important?
The
citation is not important. The source of my data is not important.
It is the methodology.
What does that mean? The source of my data is not important.
It is the methodology and the credibility that is important.
Well, the World Bank and UNICEF, I feel like are
So the government of Guyana has decided that their strategy, their analysis is more credible
than the UN and the World Bank. We don't need to engage
going back here
the source of the data.
Let's move on. We're going back here again. That's based on outdated data. Let's move on.
Okay.
Using income tax data, and you could do this calculation by yourself, right? Real wages have doubled since 2019, increasing from 113 billion in 2019 to 237 billion, representing an increase of 110%. This is my calculation using income tax data, right? Net household, that's the real figure. The nominal figure increased by 102% from 193 billion in 2019 to 391 billion, right? So that is where we stand. Real wages have been trending upwards according to the income tax data.
One of the important things you got to understand is the difference between just looking at an accounting number and an actual economic analysis. What proportion of Guyanese pay income tax? The wealthier Guyanese who are in established large firms, who are public servants at a certain level and so on, they will pay a lot of income tax. But the average taxi man is not paying income tax.
Correct.
There is a very large underground economy in Guyana, which has been documented by various studies. And that, I mean, I don't have the exact percentage. I don't have the exact percentage in mind. There's one by Clive Thomas that was put out. There's two by Clive Thomas that have been put out, and then there's another one. I can again provide citations to those studies. But essentially what I'm saying is you could have had a very sharp increase in inequality in Guyana, which might mean that those at the higher end have seen an increase in their wages, and those at the lower end have seen a fall in their real wages due to the cost of living crisis.
And
guess what? Based on what happened in 2021 and 2022, that makes perfect sense.
So how you quantify underground?
But Joel, you can't just manipulate statistics to say that you're not feeling what you're feeling every day. You know costs have gone up.
You can't say to me that I can't say that. These are the unofficial numbers based on.
But Kian, you got to be fair. You got to be fair.
You're talking about some.
You got to cite.
Economy.
You got to cite your statistics.
Well, I'm citing away.
Underground economy. You can't.
No. He's one. No. Joel has one. In fairness to Joel. You're absolutely right. In fairness to Joel, we do not have the information to challenge what he just said in the context of real wages economics, okay? And what's happening on the ground in Guyana. The fact of the matter is that information, if we're about to dig into that argument, we're going to speak to the people and say, what are you feeling versus what he is saying? Are you feeling richer or are you feeling poorer? No. And the reality is, he is right based on his statistics, but we will argue that that's not the reality of what's happening.
So, what would you say if I tell you that the IMF has an unofficial estimate? Let me tell you what that and how I get that. Mm-hmm. So, when I was at the Private Sector Commission, when the IMF comes to do their annual
this is of the underground economy, right? Of the underground
economy. Hear me out. When they come and they engage with the private sector, government, and so on, to do their Article 4 report, which is an annual country report. So we asked them, this was about a few years ago, this is in ANUG days, when ANUG was in government. We asked them, what is their estimate? Do they have an estimate for what they're referring to as underground economy? And the guy said, yes, 1% of GDP. 1% of GDP.
That's according to you.
That's from the IMF.
No, but that's according to you.
No,
I don't know what the IMF said to you.
Not according to me. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's up to you to
No,
believe
no.
or not.
I will happily forward actual citations. I have no idea what you claim the IMF said to you. I wasn't in the room.
How that could be possible?
But where is yours? That's the problem.
No. I come in with them.
Bring yours.
No, but Elson,
1%
you said
of GDP is in the underground economy, but we are.
But you said economics.
No, that's years ago.
You said economists call you.
1% of the
Why
GDP.
people can't call him?
Well, because the moment that I say which economists call me, they're gonna go after them.
You see, that's an opposition typical.
Oh well.
Escape.
There are young people who have expressed to
Anybody
me
ever went
fear. I was fired the moment the government got into office. If anybody ever went after me, oh my God. This is the kind of, they're just calling things, just saying things, and at the end of the day, they have no backing of it, they have no thought behind this thing. This is what is going on in this country. People are scared. There are young people who express to me that they support it, but they can't come out and speak because they're afraid of being discriminated against.
So well then you be their voice. Let's hear.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing.
That's
what I'm doing. Yeah. But I'm not going to say this person who is at UG doing this, and then next thing you know, the person can't get a job. I'll give you another example. The girl who made the allegations against Nigel Darmlal, she has said to me that she's finding it difficult to get a job. She's saying that she's facing discrimination. That's just a typical example in this country. And frankly, it is disgraceful. But here we are, you know? Freddie, I don't know if you want to change that.
I'm glad we're having this thing. Is one of the most.
So let's start. Hold on. Let me speak to that. Let me don't allow him.
But about the victimization thing, I want to come.
Let me speak. Hold on.
I was about to say, hold on a second, Freddie. I feel like you might have some things to say.
So I feel like you've felt victimization once or twice in life.
Hold on. I mean, there are very fierce critics of this government that are doing well. I could just think of Christopher, but I don't want to get into. He's building a head office of $700 million. But anyway, it's right. You young people do your thing.
Elson Lowe could come here and make up things, people telling him about
okay.
So we don't know. We can't verify.
Well, I just gave you an example of a person.
Are you fearful about speaking out against the government or not?
I just came here and gave you an example of a person who is in the public who has complained about discrimination, a specific person.
People are complaining every day freely. People are criticizing the government.
Well, all I'm saying is you're moving the goalpost. You say bring evidence. You say do calculation. You say cite a person. You say give me a citation. I mean, all right, let's keep going.
No, but let's speak to the discrimination.
I never knew you used to be so aggressive.
No, what is going on is that it is unfortunately requiring robust contestation.
You have certainly developed.
But I do want to tell us, and at the same time, we started this conversation to have proper dialogue because, as we said, as three people sitting down here in the political arena, the reality is there has to be discourse that we can all reach a certain level on, and the people of Guyana have to understand that we have to be able to move forward with the best interests of them. We can have our opinions, we can have our feelings, our personal emotions, but the reality is if the decisions and what we are speaking about, the policies, do not benefit their lives, then all we're doing is quarreling like clowns amongst ourselves. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is why I would love for us to bring the discussion back to some policy discussions.
I'm glad let's talk policy. So let's talk policy.
All right, great.
Since you're fed up clunging out yourself now. So
all right, hold on, Freddie. Is that allowed in this debate? In this discussion?
I withdraw. So let's
welcome to the PVP. I have to know better.
But he said clunging out, right? So I say you're clunging out yourself for the argument.
All right.
Anyway, so let's get some serious thing going. Let's talk about the discrimination in terms of availability of job. The thing is, I'm not saying that there isn't discrimination in the society.
Okay, great start.
I'm not disputing that.
Good start.
There may be, and it may exist. I'm not disputing that. But what is also factual that as a policymaker, you're sitting in a policymaker chair. I am not. I am independent. Is that the problem we have today now, or the reality of today, is different from 10 years ago as it relates to job. And what is that reality and how different it is? 10 years ago, it would have been correct to say that you don't have job opportunities. And so that was real 10, 15 years ago. Now, you have job opportunities. Job opportunities are available in abundance, but we have some issues. One, we have people with skills, people who are qualified with skills, competent skills, but there is a skills mismatch. Those are not the skills that the job requires. So there is a misfit or mismatch. Two, we have the human capital deficit. Three, we have the lowest labor force participation rate in the world, the lowest, and that is a terrible thing. And this is why other people are coming. If you go down if you drive down the road, all the road construction, sure, Venezuelans. The Guyanese are now working. And this...
What's your reason? Why are the Guyanese not working?
I don't know.
You just think everybody just choosing to be poor?
We have to get, that's a reality. And we have to get, as policymakers, you as policymakers have to find solution for these problems. How do we increase our labor force participation rate? We have to address the skills mismatch, and we have to address the human capital deficit. So that's the reality now. So I'm not disputing discrimination doesn't exist, but you can't, as a policymaker, ignore the fact that these are some other issues that we have to confront.
I completely agree that there are many issues that need to be confronted. You speak about the labor force participation rate. One of the reasons that we've talked about a salary top-up, giving people money on top of their salaries, is because that has been shown to improve the labor force participation rate in Brazil and so on. That's one of the things we're looking at. The other thing is we've talked about giving 50,000 people $50,000 a month to incentivize them to study, because we need to increase the rate at which we accumulate human capital so it doesn't take 100 years. And as it concerns there being a lot of Venezuelans working on sites, we do understand that there's a refugee crisis, but at the same time we need to do everything in our power as Guyanese to ensure that we empower Guyanese and we give them the skills to be able to get those jobs. That's why those types of programs are so important. That's why we talk a lot about pumping money into the technical institutes, into the University of Guyana. University of Guyana is interested in nearly tripling its enrollment, but it needs financing to do that. The share of money given to the University of Guyana of the national budget has consistently declined or been very, very low. You haven't seen a real surge of funding into that university. So unfortunately, they haven't been able to expand. The technical schools similarly need a lot more funding. And while on the one hand, there are some good programs that I see that Goal
you sound like a politician there.
That I see that Goal has done. One of the real concerns is that there's a little bit of a mismatch, because there hasn't been a real focus on oil and gas programs and so on, but rather there's all sorts of random courses there. Doesn't seem to be guidance as to which courses people should pursue. So what I hear from Goal scholars, and I mean, of course, it's not everybody's experience, is that they get a Goal certificate and then they're not really sure what job you can get with this certificate. If it's recognized,
with the credibility of
it.
That's admitted.
Right, and so
if I may, I just also wanted to speak to hold on 1 second, to speak to Joel's comment about labor force participation. And I think that actually boils down partly to, again, our underground economy. Now, it's an interesting context because at the moment, we're talking about what people are being paid fair wages for the work that they're doing. I mean, the taxation system right off the bat, people are completely decentivized. I mean, if you're losing 30% of your salary off the bat to PAYE and you know, such high taxes, the reality is a man going and working for what? Call it $200,000 a month, and that's a good, not a good salary. That's not a good salary, but that's the average salary now if you're talking about labor. The reality is, these people are not incentivized to work. So we're clearly seeing a challenge on the ground, cost of living, etc., that is not translating to people being in the position to go and get legitimate jobs in the construction industry, etc., because what they're finding is they're not being paid enough to survive. So
I want to ask you guys. Yes, sure.
So
Freddie, we got over on the time, but we
but we have 5 minutes more to operate it.
Okay.
That is why the policy of the government of the day, the scholarship is meant to complement University of Guyana, and that is why the government has committed to making tertiary level education free from 2025, meaning University of Guyana, which I would expect that the funding would increase, to Elson's point. Right? If you're going to make tertiary education free, you certainly have to increase the funding to the institution. Before I hand over to Freddie, I want to say this. To Kian Jabour. a bone to pick with you. So Kian has been saying, talking about championing, suffering of people, talking about the underground economy, etc., which we don't have any credible study to quantify or to validate. but Kian, I recall you asked Kian something, and here is an indicator where the irony. There's a great irony involving in respect of Kian. A lunch, from Kian's business is $2,800. $2,800. You ask him why price so expensive, and he said he's not the regular man on the street with the pot and he a paraphrasing you, right?
Go ahead. I understand what you mean.
So that in of itself is evidence of the fact that yes, we do have challenges, yes, we do have issues, but are we going somewhere? Are we progressing? The fact that you have a target market, your business is targeting a certain market that could afford $2,800. It means that people are earning more. People from low income graduating as they upskill, as they enhance their earning capacity into the middle income, so that they could afford the $2,800.
We got problem here with practicality versus theory. I don't think you understand the reality of business economics versus your projections. I don't think you.
So let me go. Let me extend the analysis.
There's a lot of different factors as to why it's $2,800.
Let me extend
that
the
doesn't mean he
analysis.
understands business and how to be successful. He can throw numbers out there all he wants. But when you do the math,
Kian, the man coming for you personally?
Let me go.
In fairness, he's a business consultant.
Let me do the analysis.
And I'm a businessman. Very different situation.
I'm a businessman too.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Let's do the analysis. Could you say, don't give us the numbers, and I can do it similar.
Yeah, go for it.
Could you say, I started a consulting practice in 2017 when I finished my master's, right? And I'll do the same as I'm asking you. Could you say in the period before 2020, let's say from 2017 to 2019, where was your annual sales? And how
I opened in 2020.
We can get into questions.
So no. So how has your sales trend upwards from 2020 to now? What's the rate of increase?
Oh geez. So let's start right off the bat. From 2021 to now, my business has dropped 40%. 40%.
But you're not
Hold on. Here's what's more important. So what I've had to do, what I've had to do is adapt, because the average man on the road can no longer be my customer. Because again, his income is not matching what his expenses are. So the reality is, I have now at about 50% expat clientele, oil workers, foreigners, etc. Okay, almost 50%. The other 50% is our middle ground guy, is our middle class guy, middle income earners. No.
Exactly.
If I've already dropped 40% and now I've split that 60% in two, all of a sudden you've seen that middle income bracket shrink.
You have changed your business model.
No.
You've changed.
I didn't have a choice though. I've had to adapt to the market.
Because the structual transformation
the lower income
of
people have less expendable income now, so I cannot appeal to them. And that market has grown. That group, that demographic is even larger now. The lower income demographic has grown because cost of living has gone so high that just the conversation we had earlier, people have less expendable cash flow. Poverty has increased in the country. So what I've had to do now is adapt to the expats and the middle income who have, or small and medium scale business people that have a little extra income, that I can increase my margins and go over quality over quantity. When I say quality, you understand what I mean. Right? I'm not looking to sell 100 lunches anymore. I look to sell 20 lunches now. So I've had to increase the cost in order to make up for what I've lost, the other 80% of
you
demographic.
make my case, you validate my argument.
I don't know if I have.
It almost feels like you're saying. It almost feels like you're saying Guyana is for foreigners, not for local people.
No, that's what you're saying.
That's the argument you're making. Rich people.
Yeah.
You got to go.
My business doing something
So
is
you
very
want to
different from what I
remain
see
poor
there.
all the
Right?
time? You want people to remain poor all the time?
I am hoping to get here. I will say this to everyone.
That's what
You know why I'm in
Elson
politics? Wait. You know why I'm going to say this to guys. You know why I'm in politics? Because I realized a long time ago that I'm going to be okay. I'm a successful businessman. I know what I'm doing. You know why I decided to get into politics? Because I realized if I can make everyone in this country richer, I will do better. Okay? That is my business principle. If more people have more money to spend on my business, I will do better. So why not get everybody in a better position?
2 minutes over, so we're just going to take 1 minute. Before we take that 1 minute, I have to say there's been a transformation of Elson Lowe. 3 years ago, he wasn't so vociferous and aggressive.
No, okay.
What have
It's
you been
campaign season.
What have I been eating?
just briefly, alphabetical Joel.
About Elson, no transmission.
Closing remarks, is it?
Yes.
Closing remarks? I thought you asking me why.
I thought so too. I thought so too.
I would say.
I don't know what he's going through in life.
Listen, let me give Elson some credit. Elson is very good. He's a very good entertainer and a very good debater. He knows how to draw the attention of a crowd with theatrics.
I see.
Theatrical performance, right? As a compliment, as a compliment. As a politician, that's the kind of things you got to do to shift away from when serious question come to you. Where is alternative policy? Where is alternative development plan?
I cited several policies today.
Where is the oil and gas development?
All three of you are serious exploiters.
Exploiters?
Yes, the operator has to be paid for an hour. We've gone over an hour.
Robbie's a good guy.
You're exploiting the poor man. Quickly,
yes.
Just briefly,
I would like to very quickly, briefly say it's actually been a pleasure hearing these two guys, and I will say they far outmatch my economic, knowledge, etc.
You are on par.
And these guys, I will say, my biggest challenge will always be in politics is making sure that these two guys here have these types of debates. But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure it translates to better life for Guyanese. They have the knowledge. We have to now figure out a way to move it from here into actual policy that will benefit Guyanese.
So you want to be the middleman.
We gotta go now, but something you two guys don't know about him. He was the economic advisor to the opposition leader in a technical capacity. Do you know he's right now in the PNC leadership after the last election? He contested.
Yeah, I got.
He's a politician now.
So, I think
I'm the treasurer of the PNC.
Look at that. So
excellent.
When the only man here.
What was his position with the PNC?
He's not in a he's not in a political party, so please give him a PNC membership application or give him a
there you go. Yeah, good suggestion.
Listen. This was one of the better Freddie Kissoon shows. Thanks a lot.
A pleasure.
Thanks for being with us. You were watching a fierce, tsunamic, volcanic, whatever word you want to use, exchange on the political economy or the economic foundation of Guyana. Our guest this evening were the economic advisor to the opposition leader and treasurer of the People's National Congress, Elson Lowe, the chairman of a new and united Guyana, ANUG, and financial analyst, Bhagwandin. We will see you on Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.